He didn't remember the exact day his life began to feel smaller. Only that one evening, it finally felt quiet enough for him to notice. The apartment was dim, lit by a single lamp near the window. Outside, rain pressed gently against the glass. Not loud, not dramatic, just enough to blur the city lights into soft streaks of gold and blue. It was the kind of night people forget easily. He sat on the edge of his couch, jacket still on, phone resting loosely in his hand. Notifications waited, messages he hadn't opened, a calendar full of plans he kept postponing. Nothing was wrong, and that was the problem. For years he had told himself that life didn't need to be exciting, just manageable. Wake up, work, eat something warm, sleep, repeat. He had learned how to exist without asking too much from the world. That night he almost went to bed early. He stood up, turned off the lamp, and let the room fall into darkness. For a moment, he felt relief, the familiar comfort of ending another day without expectation. But as he reached the bedroom door, something stopped him. Not a sound, not a thought, just a feeling. Quiet, persistent, like the sense that if he closed his eyes now, something would quietly pass him by. So he turned back. He opened the window slightly. Cool air slipped into the room, carrying the smell of rain and distant traffic. He leaned against the frame and looked out, really looked, for the first time in weeks. Down on the street, a cafe across the road was still open. Warm light spilled onto the wet pavement. Inside, a few people sat alone. No laughter, no urgency, just presence. He realized how long it had been since he'd been anywhere without needing a reason. He picked up his jacket again. The cafe bell chimed softly as he stepped inside. The warmth hit him first, then the quiet murmur of voices, the clink of cups, the low hum of a song playing somewhere overhead. He ordered tea, sat by the window, watched the rain. Minutes passed, maybe more, and then something unexpected happened. A woman at the table nearby dropped her spoon. It rolled toward his feet. He picked it up, handed it back. Their eyes met for only a second. She smiled, not politely, not nervously, but like someone who wasn't in a hurry. They didn't speak, and yet something shifted. He returned to his seat, heart beating just a little faster than before. Not because of her, but because of himself. Because for the first time in a long while, he felt awake. He stayed longer than he planned. Long enough to notice the barista humming along with the music, long enough to finish his tea slowly, long enough to feel the weight of time without wanting to escape it. When he finally stood to leave, he didn't feel changed. Not yet. But later, weeks later, he would think back to that night and understand something important. Nothing magical happened. No promises were made, no paths were revealed. But that night, he chose to stay awake when it would have been easier to disappear into sleep. And sometimes, that's how life changes. Quietly, without warning. In moments no one tells you will matter. He didn't go home right away. When he stepped back out into the rain, the night felt different. Not brighter, not warmer, just more present. The street seemed less like something he passed through and more like something he belonged to, even if only briefly. He walked without direction, past closed shops, past apartment buildings where lights flickered on and off behind curtains, past lives that were happening quietly, without asking him to participate. For years, he had believed that moments only mattered if they announced themselves, if they arrived loudly, if they demanded attention. But this one didn't, and that unsettled him. He slowed his pace, hands in his pockets, listening to the rhythm of his own steps against the wet pavement. Each sound felt deliberate, real. He realized how rarely he moved without trying to get somewhere. At a crosswalk he stopped. The light turned red. No cars came. Still, he waited. That was new too. Waiting, without checking the time, without filling the silence, without reaching for his phone. A thought surfaced then, uninvited. When did I stop trusting quiet moments? He couldn't answer it. Instead, he remembered smaller things, things he hadn't thought about in years. The way evenings used to stretch endlessly when he was younger. The comfort of sitting somewhere familiar without feeling the need to improve himself. The version of him who believed life would eventually explain itself. Somewhere along the way, he had decided that unanswered questions were dangerous. That stillness meant falling behind. Tonight suggested otherwise. He eventually found himself at a small park, nothing remarkable about it. A bench, a tree, a street lamp buzzing faintly overhead. He sat down, the cold seeping through his coat, and he stayed. A couple walked past, laughing softly. Someone jogged by, headphones in, lost in their own world. The city continued, indifferent to his quiet revelation. That felt oddly comforting. He thought about the woman in the cafe, not in a romantic way, not with longing, just as proof. Proof that connection didn't always need intention. Proof that presence could be enough. He imagined how easily he could have missed that moment. If he had gone to bed early like he planned. If he had convinced himself that nothing was waiting for him out there. How many other nights had passed that way? The thought didn't make him sad. It made him attentive, as if life were gently reminding him, I don't disappear when you're tired. I wait. When he finally stood up to leave the park, the rain had slowed to a mist. The air smelled clean, new. Back in his apartment, he didn't turn on the lights right away. He left the room dark, letting the city glow filter in through the window. He sat on the floor, back against the couch, and for the first time in a long while, he didn't feel the urge to distract himself from his own thoughts. He thought about tomorrow, not with anxiety, not with ambition, just curiosity. What if he didn't rush through it? What if he noticed the spaces between things, the pauses, the almosts, the moments that never asked to be important? He understood then that change rarely arrives fully formed. It doesn't knock. It doesn't introduce itself. It begins as awareness, a quiet refusal to sleep through your own life. Weeks later, he would still think about that night, usually while doing something ordinary, washing dishes, waiting for an elevator, sitting in traffic, and each time he would feel the same subtle shift inside his chest. Not happiness, not clarity, but permission. Permission to slow down, permission to stay, permission to believe that even the smallest choices could bend a life in new directions. Nothing about his world changed overnight, but he did. And sometimes that's enough to begin, because the nights that matter most are rarely the ones anyone warns you about. The night didn't end when he finally went inside. It never really does. He stood in the doorway longer than necessary, keys still in his hand, listening to the quiet settle around him. The apartment smelled faintly of rain and something familiar. Dust, old paper, the kind of stillness you only notice when you stop rushing through it. He placed the keys on the table, slowly, as if sound itself mattered again. For years, evenings had been something to escape, something to fill, something to survive until morning. But tonight didn't ask him to do anything at all. He didn't turn on the television, didn't reach for his phone, didn't try to distract himself from the weight he usually carried. Instead, he sat. Just sat. The chair creaked beneath him, reminding him that time had passed here too. He noticed details he had ignored for months. The way the lamp cast a warm circle on the wall, the soft ticking of the clock, the quiet hum of the city breathing outside his window. Nothing extraordinary, and yet something felt different. At some point, he realized he was tired. Not the exhausted kind that sleep fixes, but the deeper kind. The kind that comes from constantly pretending you're fine. From running without knowing where you're going. From measuring your life by milestones you never chose. He leaned back and closed his eyes. For the first time in a long while, he let a thought finish itself. What if I don't need to fix everything tonight? The question didn't come with answers. Only relief? He had spent so many nights trying to plan his way out of uncertainty. Tonight, uncertainty sat beside him quietly, not demanding explanations, and strangely, it felt safe. He stood up and walked toward the window. The rain had softened now, leaving the glass streaked and blurred. Streetlights reflected back at him, fractured into golden lines. Somewhere below, a car passed slowly, tires whispering against the wet pavement. He watched until it disappeared. There was a version of himself, he remembered this clearly, who once believed nights were dangerous, that silence meant failure, that being alone with your thoughts was something to avoid. But standing there now, he understood something else. Silence wasn't judging him. It was waiting. His phone vibrated on the table. A message he didn't open. A notification that could wait. For once, he didn't feel guilty about ignoring it. Instead, he poured himself a glass of water and leaned against the counter, listening to the quiet echo of the apartment. Each sound felt intentional, each moment unhurried. He thought about all the evenings he had rushed through, all the conversations he half listened to, all the nights he told himself, "Tomorrow will be better," without ever asking, "Why not now?" Tonight didn't promise a better tomorrow. It offered something smaller. Presence. Time moved differently after that. Minutes stretched, thoughts slowed. The constant inner noise, the one he had mistaken for motivation, began to fade. He remembered things he hadn't thought about in years. A song his father used to play late at night. The comfort of sitting in a parked car after a long day, not ready to go inside. The strange peace of knowing that not every moment needs to be productive, to be meaningful. These memories didn't hurt. They simply existed. And for the first time, he allowed himself to exist with them. Eventually, he noticed the clock. It was later than he expected. Normally, this realization would have sent him spiraling, calculating lost hours, worrying about the morning, replaying everything he should have done differently. But tonight, he smiled faintly, not because things were perfect, but because he had stopped fighting the moment he was in. He prepared for bed slowly, deliberately. Each small action felt grounded, real. As he lay down, the city outside had quieted further. The rain had stopped completely now, leaving the world washed and still. He stared at the ceiling, waiting for the familiar wave of restlessness to return. It didn't. Instead, there was a gentle understanding forming beneath his thoughts. Nothing dramatic had happened. No breakthrough. No resolution. No sudden clarity about the future. And yet, this night mattered. Not because it changed his life, but because it showed him something he had forgotten. That life doesn't always announce its turning points. Sometimes they arrive softly, disguised as ordinary evenings, hidden inside moments we almost rush past. As sleep finally came, he held on to one quiet truth. He didn't need to run tonight, and maybe, just maybe, he didn't need to run tomorrow either. If this story stayed with you, maybe this quiet evening mattered too. Thank you for spending these moments with Quiet Evenings. If you enjoy stories that don't shout, but stay, consider subscribing. More quiet nights are waiting.